Alright, so now we're going to play a little bit more around with the shell. So let's launch that by some python manage.py shell. And again, we need to import our cache tracker. So from our receipt, so from cache tracker.models, so from the cache tracker application, from the models module, import receipt. Alright, so that's definitely imported. I can do help on receipt just to verify it. Brings up all the documentation. I'm going to hit Q to exit. Q. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is let's get the receipt.objects.all and see what's in there. So if you remember from the last video, we added this. So the query said, here's our receipt module, and we have a notebooks with 15. Now, because I said that this is a list, I'm going to assign this to a variable. So r is equal receipt.objects.all. I can just do r, I can print r. And since it's a list, well, let's do a type of r. It's a query set. So since it's essentially a list, I can index it. So r0 is a notebooks 15. So how do we add new objects? To add a new object, we're going to say, we're just going to call it new is going to equal to receipt. And we need to give it all the information that the receipt class expects. And then let's see, I got to open that file just to remind me. So we need a merchandise. The purchase date, it's going to be defaulted to timezone.now. So since it has a default value, we don't really have to declare it. So really the only thing we need to tell it is what the merchandise is, that's a char field, and what the price is, that's also a char field. So let's do that. So I'm going to say new is going to equal receipt, and we're going to say the merchandise is going to equal, instead of a notebook, we'll do a textbooks, and a comma to separate these. And we're going to say, what was it, the purchase price or just price? Okay. So price is going to equal, we'll do, textbooks are super expensive, so we'll do $250. Print out new. Now notice if we do the receipt.objects.all yet, it's not actually saved to the database yet. We have it saved as a variable new, which is an instance of, it's an object, an instance of the receipt class with the merchandise set to textbooks and the price set to $250. To actually save it to the database, you need to call the .save method on that object, and you do that by using, again, the dot notation. So go into the new variable, which the new one is our receipt object, and call the save method. Enter. Now, if I do receipt.objects.all, textbooks is in there. So let's do a query. So I'm just going to create a new variable. Is going to be q equals receipt.objects.all. We know that returns this list right here, and I want to grab the first index. So this is index 0, should say index 1. So index 0, index 1. So that should return our receipts textbooks. And we can do that just by tagging on the index. Alright, so Q, there it is. Q is my textbooks. We can also access the individual attributes of this class. So if I do q.merchandise, textbooks. If I do q.price, it was $250. Let's do help on Q. And it brings up again our receipt class documentation because it's an object of the receipt class. I use Q to quit out of that documentation. Let's do, what if we want to do delete this? So let's query our database again. Receipt.objects.all. We know Q is set to this index. It grabs this object. So I'm going to say q.delete. And let's filter, or let's query the database again, and now there's only one in there. We deleted this object, this instance right now, so it's actually physically removed from the database. Let's see. So that's pretty much the quick introduction to how you query a database, query a model, and return all the objects. You notice the query set is a type of a list essentially, so you can use index lookups on it. We told you how to create a new instance, which is when we did our receipt. You got to tell it which attributes it needs, so we'll put that textbook back in there, textbooks, and the prices was $2.50. And we're going to do r.save, and we'll query the database again. So you've seen how to create new objects, how to save them to the database, how to query the database, and then also how to delete objects from the database. The next video we'll go over the filtering. So how can I go through my query set, how can I go through this and we'll say return only textbooks, or return only things that end with books. So I don't want to return pens, I just want to return any item that ends in books. Maybe I want to return things that are greater than $200 or less than $20, something like that. That's when you use filters, and that's what we're going to go over in the next video.